increase like climate change and basically just affect everyone in general.
Also, a lot of people see like pollution and things like that as something that doesn't directly affect them. So I feel like if we like talk about it more, or yeah, like what Kathy said, where we bring up like how it's people's main like food stores and things like that, maybe they'll start to get the idea. And if we say like if we tell them to put themselves in like those people's shoes, it'll help out.
I was thinking about what Evelyn said about there being more carbon and stuff in the atmosphere. And I remember sometime during this year or during 2020, at some point, like the coldest place on Earth, the Atlantic, had actually caught on fire because of like oil spills and stuff. So it was just shocking to see some place that was so cold and like surrounded by water be caught on fire. It was strange because you don't expect it to actually like you don't expect it to be something that can happen, but like it's a very plausible thing that can happen, and it's really bad because I mean the polar ice caps are already melting as it is, but like now that it was on fire, it's like it's probably like 100 times worse, you know?
I think the worst part is like, unlike many of the indigenous communities like the Inuit in Alaska that had to depend on orca whales, I think a lot of people have the privilege of not having to think about like hunting their food or finding if their sources directly from like the sources that are having oil spills and such. So I think people forget that they have the privilege of not having to feel if maybe the place you try to hunt in is not doesn't have anything, and then they have to like depend on like maybe like surplus. What usually would be surplus would be like something that they have to depend on survival. So, and now that the Atlantic is kind of fire and such, like the implications of what ocean pollution is doing to people is it's getting closer and closer to the general public, not just rural communities, but maybe urban communities in the future too. Like maybe things are gonna flood or there's gonna be like less oxygen and global warming is gonna get worse.
Yeah, and I feel like people like should like not advertise, but like put it out there more. And it reminds me about like at how like a couple months ago when a bunch of people on TikTok were talking about like the polar bears because they started seeing more videos about how like the ice was melting, and they were talking about like this company and how they were like taking oil or something like that. And I just think that that helps like spread awareness where like they go on to ask where like predominantly like let's say kids are on, and then those kids will talk about it with their parents, and then their parents will see, and then their parents will talk with other people, and it just gets the word out.
I agree that the remaining issue should be advertised to kids because like maybe like they because we're the future of our world. So if we know about what's going on now, hopefully as adults we can help try to maybe better the problem or soften the problem a little bit. But I mean, if we know it now, we can do what we can to like fix what we do as a society to help like not screw up the planet more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
adding to on to that,
sorry.
it's all right. We should totally. I think we should also have a initiative to like elect politicians. Yeah, politicians may not be perfect, but maybe elect politicians to actually care about the environment. Like those are actually aware what's happening marine life, especially maybe people from these areas because they know the most what's going on. So then they'll be able to enact solutions, and also they probably have more like sympathy because they actually live through this. So they wouldn't be as willing to sacrifice the environment for money or any kind of any greedy motivation.
Yeah, and lately more and more like I see more and more kids talk about like important topics than like I see adults. Like the only adults that I really see talking about things like this are like politicians and things like that. Like you don't hear like adults talk about it on like day-to-day basis. But if you go out there, if you go on like social media and stuff, you'll see more kids talking about it. and they'll bring up these whole topics and what they're doing to help out. And so I think that's really good that most of us are out there like figuring out what we can do to better like the whole planet as like a whole. So then like the better like the world is better for like us and like our younger siblings and things like that.
And like to add on to what you were saying, I think it's just because like this generation is like becoming more like